Hi everybody, I'm back with a video on what I've seen, what I've skipped, an update on movies that I saw for the first time during the month of July 2016. On time for once, or more or less. So, I had a pretty busy month as far as movie watching in July. I saw a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to go over movies that I saw in the theater, movies that I caught at home for the first time ever, and also a few movies that were in the theater that I decided not to see for whatever reason. Just put it off, or I'm not interested, or mildly interested, but not enough to actually see it. So that's why it's called What I've Seen, What I've Skipped. So, started off the month with a triple feature, The Purge Anarchy, and the newest Purge movie, Election Year, which I saw in the theater. Overall, all three of these movies were directed by James DeMonaco. The first one's kind of a home invasion thriller, kind of futuristic. The second one is a little bit broader in scope, involving people running around on Purge night trying not to get killed. And the third one, of course, is about a politician that's running for president, wants to end the Purge, and she's targeted by the current administration for death, which the Purge will facilitate for them. I like the first two movies a lot. Third one I didn't like very much at all. I thought it was pretty terrible. The next movie I saw on DVD was a kind of sort of classic, but also kind of notorious, Heaven's Gate, the Western by Michael Cimino. Came out in 1980, I think. Christopher Walken, Chris Christopherson, and, oh boy, don't tell me I've forgotten her name already, Isabelle Huppert, who plays one of the main parts in I Love Huckabees, are basically just people living in I want to say Wyoming. It's been a little, I've already forgotten exactly where it takes place, but this area called Jackson County, basically, is the setting of what's known as the Jackson County Wars. You have some cattle company owners basically decided that most of the people who were Slavic or Russian immigrants were on the whole cattle thieves, were cutting into their business, and they received authorization from the United States government, including the president, just go in and wipe them out. And so it sort of ends with a couple of big shootouts amongst the different factions. This movie is notorious because they fell constantly behind schedule, and the budget went from something like $6 million to over $40 million, which was just astronomical for the late 70s. Michael Cimino had already directed The Deer Hunter, which won Best Picture and Best Director, but this movie kind of killed his career. It was slashed a bit before it came out, so the version that I saw was a recut of the movie from 2012 that was part of the Criterion collection. There's a lot that I liked about the movie, but I wasn't crazy about it. It wasn't, can't say that it's a favorite Western of mine, let alone a favorite film from that period. Yeah, it has its qualities, but overall, I wasn't, it wasn't hard for me to, to see how it wouldn't be of interest to a lot of people. Of course, some people really like that kind of thing. The whole more old-fashioned classic Western, although there's a lot of violence and sex in this, which earned it an R rating, so, not strictly speaking classic. Then I caught a horror comedy-ish type thing by Michael Dougherty called Krampus. It's a holiday-themed movie about sort of a German character. This Krampus basically is like an evil Santa Claus who will punish you if you're naughty. And this particular Krampus comes equipped with all sorts of twisted versions of gingerbread men and elves and things like that attack a family for being jerks, basically. It's all sort of set in motion by the main character, who's the son in this family. And he sort of loses a bit of Christmas faith and tears up his letter to Santa Claus, and thus invokes the Krampus to come along and wreak havoc on everyone. Pretty stacked cast in this movie. Kind of reminded me of Identity from James Mangold, which had Ray Liotta and John Cusack and Amanda Peet and a bunch of really good people in this. There's definitely a high-class production, despite its sort of lowbrow, but it's also very, very comedic, so it's not hard to see why it was attractive to some of the people that want to be in it. Sam something, darn it, what's the guy's name? Brother, I have a lot of trouble remembering actors that are really sort of well known on television, but and then segue to films more. They're more known for their television work. Scott, or maybe it's Scott. Adam Scott, that's his name. Adam Scott. He was in a movie about people who are in the catering business. No, a television show. There was a very, very well-regarded television show about people in the catering business. I don't remember exactly the name of it. Anyway, he and Toni Collette are the main parents, and they have a teenage daughter and a young son. And then they're visited by relatives who are real loudmouths, very unpleasant overall, and the whole group of them have to fight off the Krampus. An amusing movie, a pretty fun movie. So I would recommend that one. Then on DVD, I finally caught 13 Hours of Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, which is Michael Bay's film about the Benghazi attack in 2012, and how the ambassador in that country, the American ambassador in that country, got killed, and it was up to the independent contractors, the private contractors, to sort of fend off, the all the militant types that were attacking them. You have to forgive me. I even forget what country it's in. I'm pretty sure it's Iraq, but I'm not up on that, unfortunately. I hear Benghazi all the time, and I forget which country it's located in. It's pretty sad. Anyway, John Krasinski is the main character. He's a longtime friend of the guy who's leading the contractors who invited him to come over here to make some money for his family. He's real estate. he's working in real estate most of the time, but the market sucks, which is why he's in the Middle East working in an American outpost. The name of the actor who plays his friend and the leader of the private contractors is one that escapes me. He was on 24 on the third season, and he also played the prime henchman of Ben Kingsley in Iron Man 3, or should I say the prime henchman of Guy Pearce. I can't remember his name offhand, though. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm not a huge fan of Michael Bay. Many of his movies I hate. This is probably the best movie that I've seen by him. Yeah, he avoids a lot of the usual BS, the usual Michael Bay BS in this film, which is a good thing. A decent movie, and certainly there's a lot of really tense sequences where, they're being hit on all sides, by automatic fire, and mortars are brought in at sometimes. Really, really, a well-made movie, well-made movie for a change from Michael Bay. Then I saw a movie called The Girl in the Book, The Girl in the Book, I should say, by Maria Cohn, and this is about a young woman who's played by, I am really doing badly here with the names, Emily Van Camp, who of course plays the main character in the television series Revenge, and she also plays Sharon Carter in the Captain America movies. She is the daughter of a publisher who was, basically distributing the books of a well-known foreign author, European author, who's played by Michael Nyqvist, Swedish actor from the Girl and the Dragon Tattoo movies from Sweden, not the American one, obviously, and he was also the villain in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. He is a well-known author. He had a big hit book, and he's continued to publish books through this young lady's father. The father, by the way, is the CEO of Evil Corporation in Mr. Robot. If you watch Mr. Robot, you'll recognize him very clearly. Very good at playing this sort of overbearing character. So it was pretty clear for me within the first few scenes of the movie what direction this was going to go in. because this little girl met the author when she was a teenager, like 14 years old, and they ended up having an affair at that time. And she's sort of been trying to stay away from him, but now she's forced to work with him in marketing his new book because it's being published through the company she works with. So there's sort of a back and forth timeline involving the scenes of her when she knew him as a minor then, and their relationship, and now she's trying to sort through what's happened with him, and also this new relationship that she's begun recently. It's a good drama. I liked it very much. Then I checked out Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which is directed by Burr Steers, and of course is based on the somewhat comical novel, which takes the novel Pride and Prejudice and integrates the zombie apocalypse into it. Elizabeth Bennet and her sisters are all well-trained zombie killers who carry daggers and other weapons on them at all times. So the drama of her and her sisters trying to find husbands and her relationship with Mr. Darcy, who's now a colonel and an experienced zombie killer, plays out against the background of them also having to ward off, the occasional zombie attack, which I found amusing in contrast. It's a passable movie. The main character, I believe, is Lily James, who was in Cinderella, last year's big Cinderella live-action movie. Some good fighting in this, but ultimately didn't leave a strong impression on me. Although I did really enjoy the fact that the big scene in the movie where she confronts Mr. Darcy about him sabotaging a potential courtship involving her sister and really breaking her heart, they incorporate fighting into that. They end up not only arguing but physically fighting as well, which was pretty funny. And I saw Hitman Agent 47, which is directed by Alexander Bach. Hitman was a movie, it was a video game that was adapted into a movie starring Timothy Olyphant. And in this new movie, the main character is played by Rupert Friend, who was in a costume drama some years back called Young Victoria with Emily Blunt. In this, he's taking over the character that Timothy Olyphant played, the genetically engineered hitman who's completely bald and has a barcode tattooed on the back of his head, just like Bruce Willis in 12 Monkeys. He is one of a variety of agents, but the plot involves him hunting down Hannah Ware, who was in an ABC show from a couple years ago that I really liked. I can't remember the name of it, though. It only lasted one season, I'm afraid. Hannah Ware is apparently being hunted by this guy, and you have Zachary Quinto, who's a government agent that's trying to protect her, but as it turns out, you have sort of a Terminator 2 situation where the guy who's hunting is actually the guy who's supposedly protecting her. So Agent 47, as he's called, ends up protecting her from Zachary Quinto, who turns out to be like the big bad guy. I wasn't expecting a lot from this movie, just some very stylish action sequences, and that's what I got. I didn't expect much, I got exactly that. Had some good action in it, but overall pretty forgettable. Basically just a time passer. So let me move on then to theatrical movies that I saw, aside from, of course, the Purge election year. I saw a documentary called Eat That Question, Frank Zappa in His Own Words, which was put together by a man named Thorsten Schutt. I believe he's European. I'm not really sure. This is not a documentary in the sense that you've got like people being interviewed and it's put together with narration to comprise a story. It's basically a big long clip show of Frank Zappa, who is a rock musician and composer who worked mostly in the 60s and 70s and also a bit in the 80s. He is very much a counterculture figure. He died in 1993 from cancer. The documentary basically just is some concert footage, but it's mostly just a clip show of all these different interviews that he did for television over the years. He is very much an independent thinker. He was very much an independent thinker, Frank Zappa. He started a band called the Mothers of Invention, which went through a variety of different phases, and he did some classical music composition as well. He also worked a bit in film. But he was a very outspoken social critic, especially of politicians, and probably the thing that he's best known for aside from his music, is arguing against Nancy Reagan and the other some of the other wives of politicians in Washington, D.C. in the 80s that wanted to create some kind of rating system or warning system for music. And he just thought it was a bad idea overall. He was very specific about not objecting to including the lyrics so that parents could, look at them and find out whether or not they wanted their kids to listen to it. But to rate something is to categorize it in a way that musicians that were creating the work really didn't intend. If you had, if the ratings board, of the U.S. Decided instead of putting on PG-13R and such, they would, specifically say, this is a kids movie, and this is a movie for grown-ups, and this is a movie for teenagers, rather than, the rating system is supposed to be a guideline for that, but what they wanted was a little bit more overreaching, and he encountered some sympathy from Al Gore, for one, but also a lot of people really just hated the guy, and thought that he was interfering in stuff that wasn't his business. But Frank Zappa is a very pro-artist character, really someone who wanted people that were creative types, writers, musicians, and such, to have free reign to create whatever it is they felt like creating in their own way, rather than being told this is the way you got to do it. So it's a chronicle of not only that, but also just his work as a business guy, trying to create stuff that makes money so they can pursue whatever projects he needs to and still provide for his family. I was introduced to Frank Zappa more or less by a good friend of mine in the 90s, who played me a lot of his stuff. Very, very funny music, a lot of it. Very, very satirical, oftentimes quite sexually explicit and profane, and hilarious. Really, really good stuff. And so it was a real pleasure to see just a whole bunch of clips of him over the years talking about all these opinions that he had on various issues. Really, really exciting film. I finally got around to moving on. I finally got around to seeing The Lobster, which is a Yorgos Lanthimos film. Yorgos Lanthimos is well known for doing a film called Dogtooth, and in this one is sort of another. It's sort of an alternate version of our own present, in which every single person is required to couple up. I think it takes place in England, but it's a little. It's a bit undefined. You've got Americans in the cast as well, and people from different countries, in addition to just Colin Farrell, who's Irish, he's the main character, and Rachel Weisz, who's English. The first half of the movie has him getting divorced, and so since you're required by law to be in a couple relationship, he has to go to basically this resort, and he has 45 days to choose amongst the single women there a mate, and if they have something in common, they can get married, and they'll be in compliance with the law. And if they're not, if he fails to find a partner, then he will be surgically transformed into the animal of his choosing, and he says, well, I'd like to be a lobster. But in the meantime, of course, he has to deal with all the rules, which are really, really twisted, and it's just a very, very bizarre alternate version of social dating and the importance that it's placed on it. Eventually he meets a group of people that value their autonomy and say, no, you're not, we don't value the coupling up principle that, the rest of society and the government values. But again, the rule here is you have to remain single. You can't couple up, which just seems like there is neither of these groups say, do what you want, They both say, follow our rules. And this group says you must be part of a couple, and this group says you must not be part of a couple. Is just kind of insane. Like I said, Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz are the main characters. Leah Seydoux is also in it, John C. Reilly, a few other recognizable people. It's a pretty weird movie. Steven Spielberg did a film called The BFG, which is based on a Roald Dahl children's book. The BFG stands for Big Friendly Giant, and Mark Rylance, who was in Bridge of Spies and won an Oscar for it earlier this year, plays the giant with special effects and motion capture and what have you. He meets a little girl. This little girl who's in an orphanage, in an English orphanage, happens to be awake at 3 in the morning when he sees him she sees him wandering around the city, and so since she's seen him, he grabs her and takes her back to his house. And he's like, I can't have you wandering around London saying that you've seen a giant, that would be bad. But as it turns out, he is the nicest of giants, and the other giants that he knows are not only much bigger than he is, but also much meaner as well, and so he's trying to hide her away. There's a really great scene in which she's crawling through all the various furniture and household items in his little hovel while the giants are looking for her, and it's all captured in one big long shot that circles around, and it made me, of course, wonder about all the special effects elements that went into that. I can't say that I really liked this movie much. There were moments of it that I really liked, but there was a lot of really long passages where really nothing is happening. And maybe I just need to see it a second time, but I find myself, really having to fight nodding off during a lot of it, which is disappointing given that it's a Spielberg movie. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. But I really had trouble at some parts keeping my eyes open. And there's actually a scene in which a bunch of characters are sitting around having breakfast, and this scene goes on for a really long time. And it's supposed to be comical, and it is, but it's also, it just takes, it just takes a long time to get it over with so they can get on with the story again. So yeah, pretty disappointing in that regard. I wasn't a huge fan of Bridge of Spies either. It was a fine movie, decent movie, but nothing that made me go, oh yeah, I loved it. It was terrific. After the BFG, I saw Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates, which I was really looking forward to because I really like Aubrey Plaza and Anna Kendrick. And the story is the two main characters are Adam Devine from Pitch Perfect and Zac Efron, and they're brothers who tend to cause problems and raise a lot of hell whenever they're at family gatherings. So their parents require them to bring respectable girls as dates to their sister's wedding, and when they pick Aubrey Plaza and Anna Kendrick, what they don't realize is that the two of them are even bigger screw-ups than they are, and end up causing all kinds of havoc and getting wasted and just causing all kinds of trouble. And I was really excited to see the movie because, seeing Anna Kendrick and Aubrey Plaza play these two wild girls, I thought that would be great. That's really a lot of fun. But it was only sort of mildly amusing. I think a lot of the best jokes were in the trailer, and there are some good moments in it, but all in all, I was hoping it would be a lot funnier than it was. After that, I saw the Ghostbusters reboot, directed by Paul Feig, of course. You probably already know a lot about this movie, but in case you don't, we've got Kristen Wiig as the main character, and her former best friend, played by Melissa McCarthy, are both paranormal researchers, and now there's some new resurgence, to borrow from Independence Day, of paranormal activity in New York City, and so they're trying to investigate that and figure out what's causing it. Melissa McCarthy has Kate McKinnon from Saturday Night Live as her partner, inventing all of the gear, all the tech they're using, and of course Leslie Jones is an MTA employee who joins their little company to stop ghosts from causing havoc all over the place. There was a lot that was disappointing about this movie. It had nothing to do with the fact that it's a reboot of Ghostbusters, or that obviously that they didn't have any real connection with the previous movie. It's not a sequel, it's a reboot. There was no sort of previous incarnation of Ghostbusters with Peter Venkman and Ray Stantz and all those guys within the context of the story. And a lot of it I didn't find funny, and kind of tedious actually. But there was stuff that I did like about it. But all in all, just another comedy that I was hoping would be a lot funnier than it actually was. And there was a lot of things that strained credibility, like the fact that they really aren't making any money as Ghostbusters. It's not a business where they're actually getting revenue. They're just like, whatever resources they have, they're just inventing new gear all the time without seemingly any sort of end to it, and trying to deal with this problem with the ghosts. Now, a lot of people have complained about the villain, and I actually thought he was a pretty good villain, in part because he isn't played by just one actor. He starts off as this guy who's inventing devices to bring ghosts about and cause all kinds of havoc, because he hates the world and he hates people and he wants to see it end. But then when he dies, he becomes a ghost, and then he inhabits the Chris Hemsworth character. Chris Hemsworth plays their very dim-witted hunk of a receptionist who can't even answer the phone properly. but once he's possessed, Chris Hemsworth is the one actually playing the villain in the movie, and so he gets to play two roles, and that was a lot of fun. And he also has a really great ending credit sequence, which is cool. I should mention also that a lot of the Ghostbusters cast from the 80s is in this movie, but the only cameo I really liked was Sigourney Weaver. Bill Murray seemed really reluctant, like they were probably just paying him huge amounts of money to act in two scenes and didn't really care what was happening. I feel really bad for Dan Aykroyd because he tried forever to get Ghostbusters 3 off the ground, and this is basically the best they could do. A cameo as a cab driver who repeats some of the catchphrases from the original movies, and then that's it for him. Annie Potts is in it as well. She has a decent appearance, but Sigourney Weaver really is the only one that gets any good screen time. Ernie Hudson has a cameo as well, but it seems like his scene got cut short way too much. It's just like he walks into the scene, starts talking, and then the scene ends. I'm just like, wow, that was disappointing. Could have used more Ernie Hudson. Maybe Paul Feig was angry about him stating originally when the project was announced that he didn't like the fact that there would be Lady Ghostbusters. I'm punishing you, Ernie Hudson, by cutting down your cameo. Haha, you're not going to be in it hardly at all. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, not a great movie. Not a great movie, and I really wanted it to be good too. I was, really wanted it to be a fun movie. I had no objection to it existing, and I'm a fan of the original Ghostbusters movie. I figure, hey, another funny Ghostbusters movie with these people, and it's going to be good. I love Kate McKinnon. She's fantastic. She was really weird in the movie, very, very weird, and it isn't until one of the very last scenes in the movie that she gives a toast about how disconnected she felt ever since she was a little girl from everyone. And I thought, oh my goodness, she's like an Asperger's character or something like that. No wonder she's behaved so oddly, I didn't really get her character until the very end, so that was kind of cool. I like Kristen Wiig a lot too. She was really cool in the movie. And Leslie Jones. Leslie Jones is probably the best of the four. She had lots of good moments. It makes me laugh just thinking about her in general. After Ghostbusters, the following week, Star Trek Beyond came out. I thought this was a really fun movie, very well made. Justin Lin took over for J.J. Abrams. Justin Lin did some of the Fast and Furious movies. And I was a little disappointed by the limited screen time of John Cho and Anton Yelchin. Unfortunately, I wanted to see them in the movie more. But overall, it's a pretty fun movie. Much better for me than Star Trek Into Darkness. But not quite as good as the first Star Trek with Chris Pine and Zach Quinto and all those guys. A worthy, they're going to make a fourth movie, but if it was just these three movies, it would be, that would make for a decent trilogy, I thought. But there's going to be a fourth one, so there's that. And finally, I didn't get to see Jason Bourne before the month was over, so that'll be in next week's video, or you can just next month's video, or you can just hop on over to the Movie Reviewers 100 because I did a review of that. There was a movie called Equals. Equals was a movie that I was really looking forward to at the start of the summer, but it only ended up playing in like 3 theaters here in Chicago. One of them was in like the far western suburbs. So I caught it out there. I really liked it a lot. Equals is directed by Drake Doremus, who did an independent movie actually with Anton Yelchin and Felicity Jones called Like Crazy a few years back. I really like this movie a lot. The main characters are Kristen Stewart and Nicholas Hoult from the X-Men movies, of course. They are in sort of a semi-futuristic culture and society where emotions are forbidden, kind of like THX 1138 or Equilibrium. And some people suffer from what they call switched-on syndrome, which is they start feeling happy or sad or angry, and that's a big no-no in this culture. And so the main characters, when they start to fall in love with each other, they have to really struggle to suppress any sort of external sign that they are having emotions. And it's really funny. One of the first things that happen is they're all working this company together, and then someone jumps from a high floor and lands and dies, a suicide apparently. And when Nicholas Hoult realizes that Kristen Stewart is reacting emotionally, he sees her, among other things, biting her lip. A lot of people have accused Kristen Stewart of biting her lip too much, so I thought it was kind of funny they threw that in there. But I really like the build-up to their relationship. At first, she's just like playing the part of the unemotional good citizen and saying, you are suffering, you shouldn't interact with me this way, I'll report you if it happens again, blah, blah, blah. But eventually she sort of comes around and they end up sort of meeting in the communal bathroom of their office. And they'll build up those moments to the first time they actually dare to like touch each other's hands and then touch each other's faces, and then finally they end up hugging each other really hard and grabbing fistfuls of their clothes, because they haven't experienced this yet. And then of course you get on to the kissing and the really romantic stuff, and there was just this great tension up until that point of just waiting for that moment, waiting for finally to touch and start acting like a real couple, the couple that they really want to be but don't know how to express it. Guy Pearce and Jackie Weaver are also in this movie. They're a couple of people that are sort of experienced and hiding in plain sight, and so they offer some guidance. And there are a few twists towards the end that made me think that it was going to be this Romeo and Juliet scenario whereby you have these messages that miss each other, and so tragic things happen. And it's a somewhat tragic story, but not super tragic. Not like with them committing suicide or anything like that, like in Romeo and Juliet. But still, it was a very sort of poignant thing. And I really liked the photography, and the production design was very clean and sparse, a lot like Gattaca and futuristic movies like that, where everyone's sort of dressed, kind of the same, and everything is very sort of moody and chilly. Yeah, I'm really glad that I got to see this movie in the theater. Almost missed it. But yeah, it was really, really great. So yeah, this is probably not playing in theaters anywhere near you. So if you can see it on demand, then you should probably check it out, because I really like that one a lot. Now, a few movies that were in the theaters that I didn't end up seeing. Batman the Killing Joke, animated version of the Frank Miller graphic novel. Cafe Society, the new Woody Allen film. Legend of Tarzan, which is a David Yates film. David Yates did a lot of the Harry Potter movies, and he's got fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them coming out. This movie has Margot Robbie and Samuel Jackson, Christoph Waltz, and Alexander Skarsgård from True Blood as Tarzan. And I read some good things about it, but I also read some bad things, and so I just decided I'm not going to bother with that. The one thing that I actually really sort of regret not seeing is Swiss Army Man, with Daniel Radcliffe as the farting dead body that Paul Dano discovers on a deserted island and becomes his best friend. That sounded really crazy. I just didn't get around to seeing it while I was in theaters, so I regret that a little bit. I still have not seen Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. It's been on DVD for a bit, but I haven't gotten around to see it. Anyway, appreciate you being patient with me going through all those movies right there. Hopefully that wasn't as long as the last video I did, which was half an hour of me talking about the movies I saw over the course of four months. Yeah, I want to do these every month, just sort of as a catch-up video, if you're curious about that stuff. And I'll do another one, hopefully even closer to the end of August, once August it concludes. Thank you very much for watching. And again, if you haven't already, take a look at the Movie Reviewers 100 collab channel. The link is below, where I'm reviewing new movies, taking a video, dedicating one video to talk about a new movie each week on Thursdays. I'm out of breath. My throat's dry. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.